Alright, what up, y'all? So, I'm going to get into understanding the metagame a little bit using data. So, I think there's a huge tool that a lot of people don't use, and that is hsreplay.net. I figured I'd give you guys just a little bit of a background into how I select decks, how I figure out which classes I'm going to focus on during a season, stuff like that. So, first thing you do is you just go to hsreplay.net, and they give you all kinds of stuff. I think most people just go here and look at decks. You can see, specific decks by class and stuff. But from their homepage, something I really like to use is their meta tier list. So if you click the meta tier list, it gives you what the Hearthstone metagame is broken down into tiers. And this will tell you a lot about where the metagame is. I really like this because it tells you what decks you need to know how to play against. So number one thing is when you're choosing a deck, a lot of people, you'll go through all types of different data and information, what cards you have, how much dust you have, stuff like that for deck selection. Once you have a deck selected, though, this tells you a lot of information in how what you need to figure out to how to play against. So if you can't play well against these 6 decks, then you're not going to do very well in the metagame. You can have a good deck that you've selected, you can play it tightly, but if you don't know how to play against your opponent, then that's going to cost you a lot of games. So this is something I look at just to understand the metagame in the first place, kind of see where things are at in the tier list. You'll see that this goes all the way down to the D tier, pretty much every relevant deck in standard. And now from here, normally what I'll do is I'll look at the little drop-down menu. It'll tell you the most popular, the most affordable, and the highest win rate. And very important, in my opinion, to take into account the number of games. So just from here, it tells you how many games each archetype has. So I would take Dragon Warrior and Aura Paladin, and even Aggro Paladin, since they have the 3 highest game match totals. Those are the ones I would say I have to know how to play against this. I have to test this matchup a bunch. I have to know what just overruns my entire deck. I have to know what I need to play around. So these 3 would be super important for whatever deck you do end up selecting to be able to beat. And this will be very, very relevant later, so just hang on with me. But from here, a lot of times what you can do is just go through and go, okay, like maybe I don't have 11,000 dust, and you can see exactly what's available. 6,000 is a little more reasonable, but 200 games is a little low in my opinion. So I would probably start with just Dragon Warrior because it's got the most matches played. And you can see, 64% win rate with 9,000 games. That's really solid. You can come down here into these other ones and see probably some cool deck lists, but I would start with something like that probably. Aura Paladin, same thing, a ton of games played. And here this is even better. There's at least 1,000 games for each one of these between popularity, win rate, and affordability. And I would check those out. So I'm going to check out Aura Paladin and Elemental Mage just to give you guys a little idea of how you can kind of compare these decks and really just see what's going on. So let's do Elemental Mage first. So I've already got those up. And pretty much for Elemental Mage, the biggest difference between the budget version and the best version is Conjured Bookkeeper. So these deck lists are basically the same except for Conjured Bookkeeper and Blastroid. And all you have to do is just click on each of those decks. Let's go back there. All you have to do is click on each of these decks and it'll take you to these pages. So it'll show you everything in the deck. It'll show you an overview of it. It'll show you all sorts of information. So very, very valuable. I really like also seeing, the mulligan win rate, which is the win rate of games where you ended up with this in your opening hand, the percentage that these cards are kept. You can sort by all these different things, so this can help with your mulligans. So you know that, every time every time you play a game, you want to keep Living Flame. You want to keep Sizzling Cinder. These seem like obvious things, but you have data to back up those decisions, which I think is important. There is going to be a lot of intuition and a lot of common sense that's involved in mulligans and play and things like that, but having some data to back it up will always be great. And there's a little variance in this because obviously it's a ton of different people playing these decks. But those are some of the things that I look at in addition to like the drawn win rate. So this is the win rate of games where that card was drawn at any point, or if it was in your opening hand. So if you have Sizzling Cinder or Fireball, usually you win the game. If you have Conjured Bookkeeper, hey, what do you know? the big difference in cards here, Conjure Bookkeeper, when you draw it, you have a 62% win rate most of the time. That's pretty good. So that's just one way to look at some of this data. I know Elemental Mage is not for everybody. It is definitely like a budget deck. I mean, even the expensive version is like 1600 dust, which is very, very little compared to a lot of other decks out there. Like Dragon Warrior can go as high as 5,000 or more. Aura Paladin can get up in the 10,000s. And Aura Paladin's actually the one I want to look at as well, to kind of compare. So this is something I like to do when making deck selection, because it'll tell you kind of what the main core cards are, which you can see in other things. I'll show you that in a minute as well. But when it comes to figuring out which version of a deck to play, a lot of times you can figure out, well, what's the core of the deck? So if you look at these 3 deck lists, you can tell pretty much what the core of the deck is. It's obviously the auras. It's obviously Righteous Protector. Violet Treasure Gill is in these 2, but not the third one. These 3 deck lists are in order: most popular, highest win rate, and most affordable. So the most affordable version doesn't even play Violet Treasure Gill because I think they're going for budget. Makes sense. And it also cut 1 Cardboard Golem. So you can see that Cardboard Golem is also a core card in the deck. Very powerful. What else? At least the Navigator. It's in these 2, but it's not in the most affordable. So if you wanted to play Aura Paladin, but say you didn't have an additional 1600, 3200 dust to get like the really, really solid optimized version, you could look at this and go, okay, I can do this without Elise. I'm going to be sacrificing some games, but it's still going to be pretty much the core of the deck. And they make up for it with Whelp of the Infinite, it looks like, as well as Linessa, which also gives you Metal Detector and O-Manager. So this does get into kind of a different style of deck because you're playing Linessa and some other cards. These 2 versions, I think, are a lot stronger, but it gives you a starting point. When you're trying to figure out what decks to play in Standard, I think a lot of times it's easy to get lost. Like, people are like, well, the metagame is just so complex. There's so many decks. There's so many things. But if you can look at a little bit of data and figure out, the right direction to go, and then, you can either start with this deck list on the right and then work your way into Elise if you don't have her, or work your way into, more Cardboard Golems. That's very possible. And the benefit, too, is every month at the end of the season, you'll get your little rewards for however well you did on the ladder, and then you can take those and apply them to the deck that you want to play, or upgrading the deck that is close, like with these versions. Now, another thing that you can do here is when you click on that meta list, you can see it by class. So if you click on it by class, you can see this is one of the biggest key points to take away, I think, here. If you're, you've got a bunch of dust, or you haven't played Standard in a while and you're like, I want to get back into it, but I don't know where to start. A lot of people waste their dust on decks that are not actually as good as they thought, or they just don't like playing them. There's like all these extra factors that go into it. So if you're trying to figure out where to start, I recommend looking at the class, because then you can see all the different win rates of each archetype under each class. So as an example, if you just scroll through this, you can tell Demon Hunter, there's a lot of green. So green is over 50%. So there's a lot of green in Demon Hunter. There's a lot of green in Paladin. There's not a lot of green in Mage. Hunter's a little mixed. Death Knight is kind of mixed, but overall pretty green. Druid, not too much. Same thing. Shaman has like 1 good archetype that's really solid. Everything else kind of meh. Same thing with Rogue. I mean, Imbue Rogue is a thing, but otherwise, not too much. Priest, same thing. Warlock, same thing. Warrior has a lot of good stats. So if I were coming off of nothing and just jumping back into the standard metagame, I would say, okay, Warrior's a place to start, Paladin is a place to start, and Demon Hunter is a place to start. And what do you know? Those are actually the 3 classes I play the most right now. I don't play any Death Knight, I don't play any Hunter, I don't play any Druid. I focus on the classes that have the highest win rates with multiple archetypes, because then I can get the most bang for my buck in the cards that I craft. There's a lot of overlap in the Paladin decks and things that are good. Same thing with Demon Hunter. With Warrior, there's not too much overlap between Dragon and Quest Warrior, but again, a lot of times I always say that you have to choose which classes to focus on, because a lot of people will be like, oh, I want to build this deck and this deck and this deck. They're like, these are the top 3 decks, and so I'm going to work on building those. And most people don't want to dust specific cards and use that on other things, because they're like, oh, I might want to build this deck later, I might want to build this deck. and then you'll find yourself in like 3 months with about 6 half-built decks that you're just waiting to, like, okay, when do I get enough dust to be able to make this, or when do I want to drop some money on some packs or some things, when in reality, if you just focus on a couple of classes, like I normally pick about 3 classes for about a 6 or a 9 month stretch, and using the data, you can figure out which 3 classes are best for you. And best for the metagame. And then from there, you don't have to be sitting there being like, oh, well, I want to play this, but I don't have everything for it. Now, some people, just want to play everything, and that's totally fine. Do you, boo-boo. But I personally think this is the most efficient use of your resources, because at the end of the day, you want to just be playing. You want to be playing games. You want to be having a good time. You want to get up the ladder. And if you're not using your resources efficiently, you're not going to be able to do that very well. The other thing to look at is the matchup. So from that same front screen, there's class, there's matchups. Popularity is a premium feature, but but matchups, you can also see literally all of the different matchups across the board. You can even take some out. So for example, if you're playing Imbue Rogue and you're like, well, I never play Arcane Mage, I never play, there's like all these random decks that you hardly ever play against, Control Mage, Quasar Rogue, Nature Shaman. So you can take all that out and see the estimated win rates. Same thing here, like Control Death Knight is a deck that's really losing a lot of popularity, so you can take that out. And as you take decks out, it's going to adjust the estimated win rate against all active archetypes and also weighted by their popularity. So like Shreds of Time Warlock is not very common anymore. Imbue Priest you see sometimes, but it's pretty uncommon. Spell Demon Hunter, really uncommon nowadays. I don't see that hardly ever. So as you go through this, like Discover Hunter, or Tracking Hunter is another name for it, you definitely want that in there. That's a pretty popular deck, and it's also pretty decent. What else here? Like Quest Mage, very uncommon in my experience. If you'll notice, this win rate hasn't changed much because I'm taking out a lot of unpopular decks, so it's not really changing the win rate too much because it is weighted by popularity. Quest Paladin, nobody really plays Murlocs that much anymore, so we can take that out. What else? Rafam Warlock, that's kind of hit or miss. I don't honestly see too much Warlock on the ladder nowadays, but these ones here, it's showing you a lot of top tier decks first. There are a million different ways you can play with this, but if you're somebody that likes data and likes playing with the numbers and stuff, you can go through and mess with this all you want. But then it also shows you like the popularity weightings down here, stuff like that. So if I were to take like Imbue Rogue out of this, win rate changes a lot. Same thing, like Dragon Warrior changes the win rate a lot. You take these out, like if you take out the some of the top decks, your win rates change a lot. So those ones are very important here. But these are just, a couple different ways that you can look at some of this data and make educated decisions on what you're going to be playing. Because I think if you're choosing the wrong decks, that's going to cause you a lot of frustration. That's where a lot of people end up leaving the game for an extended period of time. And they're like, oh, I miss Hearthstone. They come back. I hear that all the time in comments on my YouTube videos where people are like, I just came back to Standard after a long hiatus, and, this is the deck I used, or your video helped me understand the metagame a little bit more, stuff like that. So I think it's important to be able to come back with some power and some force, because otherwise you're just going to end up getting frustrated and probably taking more time off. Now, one more thing that's worth noting here is in this tiered meta list, it's very important to understand the difference between just playing your deck well and playing against your opponent. So one of the reasons I mentioned early on that you need to know how to play against these A-tier archetypes is because if you have a deck that does well against these, but you're not thinking about, oh, well, Dragon Warrior has Wind Peak Worm, so I need to make sure that if they played a Dragon on turn 4, that I'm prepared for a situation where Wind Peak on turn 5 doesn't completely mess up my entire game plan. Same thing, or a Paladin. I need to know that if they played Ursine Maul and they attacked twice, it's very likely they have Gelbin in their hand. So when they have 8 mana, I need to be able to handle all those auras that are coming. I can't be I can't have no momentum the turn before they would play a Gelbin, because then I'm going to just get smashed, because then I'm going to be already on my heels and trying to make up for it while they're accumulating extra value from the auras. And that's not even taking into account if they played a cardboard golem or anything like that that extends that momentum they could gain. Same thing with Elemental Mage. Knowing how to play against all these decks is going to be huge. For example, Cliff Dive Demon Hunter. If you don't have a way to deal with a recurring blob of tar from Ravenous Fell Hunter, then you might want to reconsider your deck choice, because that is literally the highest win rate out of the A tier. So just really important to look at data. I think in today's day and age, there is an over-reliance in data, and I think it's surface level data. I think a lot of people just go, let's look at the decks, let's see, okay, what are the Paladin decks, what are the Druid decks, and people look at this stuff, and you can see, a lot of interesting stuff. You can see your win rates, but just this is surface level. Seeing, this has got a, like this, for example, let's go back to Mage. I got a 63% win rate with 4,000 games. That's decent. Well, we can weight this by win rate, and then let's look at something like, let's find a crazy one. There we go. 67% win rate with 200 games. That's not really something that should be paid attention to too much. Sure, I'll take it into account, and I'll look at those deck lists, but I give that a lot lower weight than something that has 9,000 games with the 64%. So I think a lot of people chase a win rate. They'll be like, I did 80% with this. You're like, how many games, bro? Like 10. It's just not the same as getting 70% with 1,000 games. If you're going 80% in 10, 20, 30 games, that's great. That is a step in the right direction. But the greater data is going to tell you a lot more about the metagame. So I think that, the meta tier list is going to tell you a lot. And you can also look at these in terms of archetype. This is the last thing I'll show you here. If you're on this page, you can click View Stats, and it'll show you everything for that archetype. So let's just look at Aggro Paladin. So the overall win rate, 60% about. It's about 20% of all the Paladin decks. The best matchup is Quest Paladin. Nobody really plays Murloc, so not really important. This is an unfortunate one because the worst matchup is Spell Demon Hunter, which also pretty unpopular deck. But it also tells you things like the core cards. These are the main things you're going to be playing in the deck. You can see some of those matchups again, specifically by archetype. Like we can do this also for Aura Paladin, because that one I think is very relevant right now. I personally think Aura Paladin is very well poised to kind of take over the metagame. 59%, not the greatest win rate overall. 18,000 games, that's about double what we saw on the last screen though for Aggro Paladin. This is 43% of all Paladin decks, so it's also a huge chunk of popularity, part of why I say that it's going to probably be a big force in the metagame. Best matchup, Arcane Mage, pretty low popularity deck, so that makes sense. Worst matchup, this is something to take into account, Broxigar Demon Hunter, which is a deck that's been gaining popularity lately. Doesn't have to be Cliff Dive. I think Broxigar Demon Hunter, similar to like Big Demon Hunter, is a little variation that sometimes plays Cliff Dive, a lot of times doesn't. And again, you can see core cards. You see, you should probably be playing at least one cardboard golem, because that's going to help a lot with the auras. Kind of like we saw with those deck lists that we compared. Even the budget version still played, did it play one cardboard golem? I don't remember now. But point being, you can see all those different things if you look at specific deck lists. But this will tell you exactly what's important in the deck. Puppet Master Dorian, really good card right now. Very good. Gives you double Gelbin. Because you play Puppet Master, you use your Ursine Maul to draw, so then you can get an extra Ziliax, you can get an extra Gelbin, you can get, just stuff like that that's going to give you massive value. And then same thing with matchups. Like, look at these matchups. Like, Mage, almost green. That's crazy. Elemental Mage, not so great, so worth keeping an eye on that. Like I mentioned, you got to know how to play against those other decks. So if you can be very good at playing against Elemental Mage, then you can smash all the Mage players and just squeeze out a couple extra points there. Hunter, great matchups. Death Knight, Druid, just all really solid numbers here. So Aura Paladin, I think, is really well poised to kind of take over the metagame. And then from there, we're going to see the whole rock, paper, scissors thing take place, where you need to find a deck that beats that, which might be the Broxigar Demon Hunter deck. And then from there, you can figure out what beats Broxigar Demon Hunter. And then a lot of times that deck will then get beat by Aura Paladin. And you have this rock, paper, scissors type of tiered metagame that evolves. That's something that happens a lot whenever there's innovation in the metagame. I've seen it happen in Hearthstone the last decade or so. I've seen it happen in Magic the Gathering for the last like 20 years and all sorts of different formats. So card games and like psychology of people, it's pretty much the same across most games. You know, you're going to see these same patterns develop, and the more you can start to see them and kind of, I don't recommend getting too far ahead of them, because sometimes that'll lead you into a place of, you know, trying to chase new decks or trying to be too innovative, and then you end up losing too many games because you're way too far ahead of the metagame. You're like, oh, well, I was playing that 2 months ago. It wasn't good. And it's like, well, maybe it wasn't good then, but now it's good. So there's so many different moving parts to keep in mind, and this can go as deep as you want it to go. But I would say if you are starting from scratch, number one thing, look at that meta tier list, know how you're playing against these decks, and choose a deck that can at least handle these decks, if not smash them. So if I were starting from scratch right now, your 2 best budget options: Aggro Paladin, Elemental Mage. Very straightforward decks to play. Aggro Paladin is a lot about sequencing and playing around what your opponent is doing so you don't get blown out. You want to just keep a board of dudes, Crusader Aura, Flash Sale, Swing, Smash Face. Elemental Mage, massive value in those cards. I think Elemental Mage is likely a little bit better than Aggro Paladin because it's got more consistency against other decks. Like Aggro Paladin's a very like, I win or I lose and I know by turn 5. Whereas Elemental Mage, there's a lot more play to some of those cards, and so if you're a better player, and you're not as new, Elemental Mage is probably the better choice over Aggro Paladin because you get a little bit more play to those cards, and your play skill can really outweigh the sequencing or some of the more basic elements of Hearthstone. Same thing with Dragon Warrior. I think that's a very good deck, but I do get the impression that it's starting to kind of decline in popularity. I was very happy to see Prescient Slither Drake come out in the mini set recently, which is just a fantastic card. It ends up being a 4-mana 6/9 with elusive, basically, if you got a dragon in your hand, which you usually do. But that's essentially it, guys. Lots and lots of stuff that you can take into account, but if you're starting from the bottom of the barrel or you're coming back to the game, keep it simple, figure out something you can play well, and you know how you can play around your opponents. And as always, make sure you smash the like button. I can't stand when people use these terms, so I love to make fun of it. But it does make a big difference for the channel, so if you guys enjoyed the content, if you want to see more stuff like this, you know, like, comment, follow, all that fun stuff. If you already follow, serious thank you. I appreciate you guys. If you already follow and you want to help out the channel, just drop a comment every now and then. Helps those dreaded YouTube algorithm gods tell other people that there are people that are enjoying the content, and it puts it in front of other people. Next up, I'm going to be doing a Legend run. I'm recording this on January 31st, so tomorrow the ladder resets, and I'm going to make another run for Legend. I do it all on YouTube, so it's going to be all live streamed on Twitch. I'm going to see if I can live stream it on YouTube as well. And then I put up the videos on YouTube, usually like day of or the following day, depending on a lot of different factors. So keep your eyes out for that. Check out the other videos on the YouTube too. If you're into competitive decks, ton of that stuff, Dragon Warrior, Aura Paladin, lots of Demon Hunter, things like that. But if you're into fun decks and you want to see something like a little bit less like grindy and like I'm smashing the ladder, then I'm playing cool, fun, interesting things like Searing Reflection Paladin. I was playing Grime Street Paladin for a hot minute, just, you know, silly things to kind of mix it up so that we're having fun. But check them out. Appreciate you guys. Catch you next time. Peace and love.